20 CR 1358, People versus Letecia Stauch. Record should reflect the jury has returned to the courtroom. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen.
Good morning.
Again, has anything occurred since we were last together that causes any of you to believe you could not continue to serve as a fair and impartial juror in this case? If so, please raise your hand. No response. All right. When we took our break yesterday, we were in the midst of the, still in the midst of the prosecution's case in chief. That's where we will resume today. Prosecution, call your next witness, please.
Good morning, Your Honor. We would call Dakota Lowry to the stand.
All right, Mr. Lowry, if you would step forward and raise your right hand, please, sir. A little farther forward.
Just go right in the middle of the court.
All right. You swear affirm the testimony about to give in this matter will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth. Go ahead and have a seat in the witness stand. Please watch your step as you step into the stand.
Good morning.
Morning.
Could you introduce yourself to the jury and spell your first and last name?
Dakota Lowry, DAKOTALOWRY,
And where do you live, Dakota?
Lorson, North Carolina.
Did you just fly in yesterday?
Yes, sir.
And what is your relationship with Letecia Stauch?
That's my sister.
Pretty tough for you being here right now?
Yes, sir.
Hang in there, all right?
Why, teacher?
Mr. Lowry, do you need a moment?
Take a break for a moment. Ladies and gentlemen, we're going to have you step back in that back of the jury room for a few minutes. All up for the jury, please. Thank you. You may all be seated. Record should reflect the jury has left the courtroom. Mr. Lowry, you going to be okay? Need a few minutes?
Yes, I just want to get this over with.
Okay. Here's the way that the process works, is that I understand that you want to get it done. I understand that. But we have to have the jury in here, and you're going to be subject to questioning by the prosecution and then by your sister's attorneys. Do you understand all that? Okay. Just do the best that you can. Just take a breath. Do you need some water or anything like that?
I'm good.
There's some water right there if you want some, or you can pour it into that cup there. So everybody's a little nervous when they're on a witness stand. Just take a deep breath.
I'm sorry.
It's okay. It happens. It's an emotional case. I get that. But you just have to do the best that you can to get through the testimony, okay?
And with the court's permission, can I just ask some follow-up questions? Mr. Lowry, I know this is very difficult for you, okay? But I really want you to focus on me, and I know your wife's here as well. And I'm just going to ask you some questions, and we'll get through this, okay? But it's important that you got to kind of keep your cool.
Okay.
All right? Can you do that?
I'm gonna try my best. I can't make no promises, but I try my best.
And I appreciate that. I know it's difficult for you here, but we'll get through this, okay? And if you need a break, just let us know. If you feel something coming up or you want to have an outburst, do the best you can and let us know, and perhaps the court, we can take another break, okay? Is that fair?
Okay. All right. All right. Let's go ahead and bring the jury back in. We have the other camera. All rise for the jury, please. All right, thank you. You may all be seated. Record should reflect the jury has returned to the courtroom. Mr. Young?
Thank you, Your Honor. Mr. Lowry, this is your first time being in a courtroom ever, is that right?
Yes, sir.
And you're probably extremely nervous.
Yes, sir.
And we're gonna get through this, okay? I'm just gonna ask you some questions and we're gonna have a conversation. Is that all right with you?
Yes, sir.
Did you let the jury know about your other family members, other brothers and sisters, your parents, that kind of thing?
I got another sister. Her name's Julie. I got a sister named Amy. My mom, Deborah. I mean, that's pretty much.
And then
I
it
got my nieces, all my nieces.
What's your niece's name? Do you remember?
Got Harley, Jazz, Kanae, Cash, Maya, Jada.
And is Deborah your mother?
That's my mom. Yeah.
And for the most part, did your family grow up in North Carolina, where you're from, Lumberton, and
Yes, sir.
both of them still living out there?
Yes, sir.
And you mentioned that Letecia Stauch is your sister,
Yes, sir.
and you see her in the courtroom today?
Yes, sir.
Could you point her out and describe what she's wearing?
A green sweater.
And when was the last time you saw her?
When we came down here in 2020.
So January 2020?
Yes, sir.
And so I want to talk about that a little bit. When you said you came out here, who came out here?
Me, my mom, and my Aunt Brenda.
And what's Brenda's last name?
Ackward,
What's your mom's last name?
Locklear.
Why'd you come out here?
We come out here to help support Tisha because we felt like she was being wrongly accused for something that we believe she would never do.
And so I'm sorry, go
We-
ahead.
We also wanted to come out here and help look for him. We did.
Go ahead and take a deep breath, all right? You let me know when you're ready.
I'm ready.
So you wanted to come out and help. You refer to her as Tisha,
Mhm.
and you also wanted to look for Gannon.
Yes, sir.
So do you remember when you came out?
January 31st, I think. 30th. It was late January. It was about to be February because my mom's birthday was that weekend or something, that next week.
And why particularly did you come out?
Because I knew my mom was going to come out here.
Did you want to support your mom?
Yes, sir.
Now, was it January 30th of 2020 when you all flew out here?
I believe so.
Where did you fly to? Do you remember?
Denver.
You got to Denver, what did you do?
Went looking for her and Harley.
Rent a car?
Yeah, we rented a car from the airport.
Did your aunt Brenda Awkward rent the car?
Yes, sir.
And did she pay for you all to come out here?
Yes, sir.
And
Mr. Lowry, you're kind of soft-spoken at times. Could you put the microphone a little bit closer to you so the jurors can hear you a little better? Thank you, sir.
You're welcome.
so when you get to Denver, your aunt rents a car. What was the game plan? What were you gonna do?
To get Tisha and Harley at least to around us.
And did they know you all were coming out?
Yeah,
And so, do you recall renting a Nissan Altima?
I think so.
You drive down to Colorado Springs, I assume?
Yeah,
Who was driving? Do you remember? Sorry, I didn't hear you.
Aunt Brenda.
And so what happens when you get to Colorado Springs? Where do you go?
Like a shopping center, because that's where we found them at.
Were you guys talking to him on your way down?
Yeah, when we was looking for them.
And so would this be a shopping center kind of on the north side of town next to a Marshall's department store?
Yeah, there was a Marshalls there.
And did they tell you why they were, or let me ask you this, did the defendant, Tisha, tell you why they were at the Marshall store?
She didn't tell us why. Not that I can remember.
Did she tell you whether or not she had an interaction with some
Yes.
police officers?
Yes, sir.
And you have to kind of wait till I finish asking the
Oh,
question
sorry.
because
Yeah.
she's typing everything down we say, okay? So what did she tell you happened prior to you getting there?
That the laws had thrown her down and detained her.
Say anything about Harley?
Yes, Harley. They said also Harley.
That upset you?
Yes, it did.
So where did you go after you went to this Marshall's parking lot area to pick them up?
We ain't got a hotel.
And do you remember the name of the hotel?
Uh, no.
Does the extended suites sound familiar?
Yeah, standing suites.
So what happened when you got to the extended suites?
That was when they was discussing wanting to get their stuff back, like get their belongings.
And who was discussing that?
Tisha.
Once you picked up the defendant and her daughter Harley, who was kind of calling the shots as to what you were going to do and where you're going to go and things like that?
I don't really know.
Well, was
I'm type like I said, I'm the type of person like just stand in the corner and wait until they just tell me what they want to do.
you're just there to help?
I'm just there.
So how many rooms did you end up getting at the extended suites?
I can't remember.
Did you
Good.
spend the night there that night?
Yeah,
Do you remember who was in your room?
I know my mom was. I believe Aunt Brenda was with us. I can't remember if we had just one room or two rooms.
Okay. Well, was Harley and your sister, the defendant, in the room with you?
We was around each other most of the time, like all of us was together most of the time.
Okay. So you mentioned earlier that the defendant was talking about wanting to get her stuff back. What did you do the next morning to do that?
We rented a van,
And who rented the van?
Aunt Brenda.
So Brenda Awkward rents, what kind of van did she rent?
Like a cargo van, I guess you would say.
And so did all of you go to rent the van?
I don't know if all of us went or not. I believe we did.
So it's you, your mother, Deborah, Brenda Awkward, Harley, and the defendant, Tisha. Where do you go?
I know at one point she tried to go to the police station and get her pocketbook and stuff like that.
Tell the jury about that. Where exactly did she go? And you probably don't know Colorado Springs very well, I would imagine, right?
Mm.
So did she tell you she's going to the police department, and did you actually go to the police
Yeah,
department?
we went to the police department.
And did she go in to try to get her belongings back that was taken
Yeah,
into
she
evidence?
did.
You know whether or not she got those items?
But I can't remember.
So where do you go from the police department?
I think that's when we went to their house to get their clothes and stuff.
So this would have been January 31st now, 2020,
I believe so.
the next morning.
That Friday.
So what happens when you get to her house?
We just started loading up the clothes and stuff that's coming out of the house.
Were there police officers there?
Yes, sir.
What were the police officers doing?
They was checking everything we brought out,
How were they checking it?
like looking in the bags and I guess just making sure there wasn't nothing that wasn't supposed to be there.
And how did you feel about being at the residence that morning?
Just aggravated.
And why were you aggravated?
Because I felt like we was getting looked at as criminals.
Is that because they were looking at your sister as a criminal?
No, they was looking at our whole family. It wasn't just her.
And so what kind of things did you guys get out of the house? Do you remember?
Suitcases and clothes, that's all I can remember.
Was it all the Harley's clothes and all of your sister's clothes?
Yes, sir.
What was the game plan? I mean, where were you going to
They
move
got-
these clothes?
They got their dogs too.
What was the plan on where you were going to go with all the clothes and things? You know?
But I know when she got it, she was ready to leave. She was ready to leave.
And did she tell you where she was ready to leave to?
I thought it was South Carolina.
And is that where she moved out to Colorado from, is South Carolina?
I don't think that's where she moved out of Colorado from.
Well, did she live in Myrtle Beach, South Carolina for a while?
Yes, sir.
Is that where she was planning on going back to?
That's what I thought.
Is that what she told you?
That's what I can remember.
So how long did it take to load up all her and Harley's things into this cargo van?
I can't remember. Over an hour, I guess.
So what happens after you get the van loaded?
We leave and go back to the room, I believe.
Do you remember whether or not your sister had an interview with a news reporter?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, she did.
Tell the jury about that. How'd that come about?
I don't know how that happened. I just know she just had an interview with him.
And did she tell you why? I mean, was anybody talking to her about doing this? Or?
I wasn't. I mean, I wasn't.
Whose idea was it to have a interview with a news reporter?
I don't know.
Foundation.
Sustained. Jury will disregard the answer.
So when you went to the house, I'm assuming you went in the cargo van. Did you also take the Nissan Altima that was,
Yeah, the Nissan was with us.
who was driving which vehicle?
I think I was driving the van, and I think Brenda was on the Nissan.
And what vehicle was your sister the defendant in?
Say that again.
What vehicle was your sister in, the defendant? Do you remember?
No. I don't remember.
You know, well, we'll go on to that. So she does an interview with a news reporter. What do you do after that?
I just know we left. I don't remember where we went.
Did you eventually go back to the
We went
hotel?
back, yeah.
Do you remember about what time of day it was?
No.
Go back to the hotel room, and what do you do when you get back to the hotel room?
I know we mentioned something about wanting to go look for him. Cause me and my mama, we wanted to go help look for him.
Tell us about that conversation.
Well, we wanted to go. She said she would get up with Albert, find out like when they're going to go out and look for him again or whatever. But we wanted to go, but at the same time, we kind of didn't because we didn't feel like we was getting treated right down here.
Is that because of what happened at the house earlier?
Yeah.
When you first got to Colorado, did you have conversations with your sister about, hey, we got to go out and look for Gannon. We got to go search for him?
We asked if they had any idea where he was at and stuff. I mean, that's about all we asked her.
And did you all ever go search for Gannon?
No, we didn't.
Did she ever say, hey, we got to go look for Gannon?
I mean, she told us that we could. That's all she told us. Like she said, we'd get up with Al and talk to him about it.
She never did. When you get back to the hotel room back on January 31st of 2020, did the defendant leave you all and go somewhere by herself?
Yes.
Overruled.
Did she tell you where she was going?
Go get some dog food for their dogs.
Do you know what vehicle she took?
The Nissan.
The Altima?
Yes, sir.
And how long was she gone?
A while.
Hour?
I can't remember that. I just know she was gone longer than what I expected.
Was it 2 hours?
I don't know.
You remember sitting around the hotel room wondering where she's at and when she's getting back, that kind of thing?
Well, I did get on the phone with my wife, and I did tell my wife I feel like she's just been gone too long. But
Say that.
because she was gone for a long time, like I can't remember how long she was gone, but I didn't expect her to take that long. But then a part of me was like, well, maybe she's just trying to take her a minute by herself. So
Did anyone try to call her and say, hey, where are you? What's going on here?
no, not that I can remember.
Does she eventually come back?
Yeah.
Tell us about that. What happens when she gets back?
I don't know. She came back and she was normal to me.
Did she have any dog food or any items for the dogs?
She had some. She came back with some stuff, like she bought something, but I can't remember.
So earlier you had mentioned that she wanted to go back to South Carolina. What was the plan with the cargo van? Was she going to take the cargo van that Brenda Awkward rented to go back to South Carolina?
I don't know if she was going to take that one because Aunt Brenda wouldn't. I doubt Aunt Brenda was going to let her. I believe Aunt Brenda told her she had to get another van.
And so the next morning, we're now on February 1st, 2020. Did you help her get a new van?
Yes, sir.
Tell the jury about that. What did you and your sister do to get a new van?
We went and drove to the budget place. We got another van. And we got the van. We unloaded all the stuff from out of the van into the other van.
So was that in the early morning hours?
I believe so.
Do you know about what time it was? Is that the first thing you did on February 1st?
I can't remember.
So when you get to the budget area, did you know that you were going to transfer things from one van to another when you got there?
Yeah.
So did you talk about that on the way to the budget rental van?
Yeah.
So talk to the jury about that. How did you guys go about doing that, moving the items from one van to another?
We just went around like to the side of the budget place, and we just backed the vans up and just swapped them out.
During that process, did you see the defendant with a rather large suitcase?
There was, yes, sir. I seen her with a lot of suitcases. Well, there was a lot of suitcases on there.
Was there one that kind of stood out to you?
Yes, sir.
Tell the jury about that. Why did it stand out to you?
Because it looked like she was struggling with it.
Did you offer to help her?
Yep.
What'd she say?
She didn't need help.
Did you ask her what's in the suitcase?
Yep.
What'd she say?
She told me it was softball stuff.
Why'd you ask her what's in the suitcase?
I didn't feel right about it.
What about that suitcase didn't make you feel right?
I just felt like it was too heavy for her.
At this time, I'd like to publish People's Exhibit 48. It's already been admitted into evidence.
Go ahead.
You recognize that suitcase we see on the TV screen?
Yep.
How do you recognize that suitcase?
Look, it's an old suitcase. And I remember that suitcase looked old, and it's green.
Is that the suitcase you saw your sister putting into the budget van?
Yep.
Is that the suitcase you asked her about what's in it?
Yep.
Is that the suitcase you didn't feel right about?
Yep.
Is that the suitcase she told you softball equipment was in?
Yep.
Thank you. Take that down. So what happens after you get everything loaded into the budget van from your aunt's rental van?
At that point, we was ready to go home.
And did you drive Brenda Awkward's van back? And did Miss Stauch, your sister, drive the budget van?
I can't remember if we turned that van in there at that place or if we had to turn it in somewhere else. But I mean, I had to drive one of them because it was just me and her.
So do you eventually turn back? It's an enterprise van, right? Is that where you rented the van that Brenda Awkward
I
rented?
think, yeah.
Did you take that van back?
Yeah, we took it back. I think we took it back later on that day.
And did you take the Nissan Altima back to Denver to catch your flight?
Yep.
What did the defendant tell you where she was going to go?
The only thing I can remember, I don't remember. The only thing I can remember is her saying something about going back to Myrtle Beach.
And did she leave with Harley?
Yeah, her and Harley lived.
Did they leave from the hotel?
I can't remember where we split up at. I can't remember where we.
Or did your sister have to go back to the hotel to pick up Harley?
Yep. I think so.
And is that the last time you saw your sister until today?
Yep.
How much older is your sister than you?
14 years.
You known her your whole life?
Yeah.
Can you give the jury an idea about the family background? How often would you see her as you were growing up, that kind of
She
thing?
come to like holidays, came around on holidays.
Where would you guys meet? North Carolina?
But she'd either come down here or go down there, or we might have went to the beach and seen her.
Had you gone to Myrtle Beach on a few occasions to
Yeah,
hang out with Harley?
yeah, me and her. I used to go down there and stay with them. We'd go to the water park, stuff like that on the weekends.
Can you let the jury know who your father is?
James Lowry.
And Would that have been your sister's stepfather?
Yes, sir.
Is your dad still alive?
No, sir.
You know when he died?
7th birthday, 2004.
Do you know the circumstances on how he died?
Got hit by a car.
Was he walking out in the street? And
I don't know if he was, I don't think he was on the street. I think he was on the side of the road.
do you know anything about the relationship between your father and your sister, Letecia Stauch?
No, sir.
Had your sister ever told you anything unusual between their relationship between your father and her?
No, sir.
If there had been something unusual, do you think you would have heard about it?
Objection, foundation.
Overruled?
Yeah. Yes, sir.
Why is that?
Because, I mean, pretty sure my mom would have said something.
And your mother, Deborah, was she, well, what kind of mom was she?
She was a great mom to me.
What do you say to me?
I'm just saying that I had no problem with my mama.
Was she very
I
protective?
think none of us should have a problem with my mama.
Was she very protective of the kids,
Yes, sir.
including Miss Stauch?
Yes, sir.
On these occasions that you spent with your sister, did you have an opportunity to see her interact with other people and make decisions and go through everyday life?
Yeah.
Had you ever known her to have a serious mental illness?
I know of, I mean, the only thing we always say she probably had was that she was OCD. That was it.
Is that obsessive compulsive disorder?
Well, we used it as excessive cleaning disorder. Like she had to keep stuff clean.
Go ahead and object to the reference of testify as to what he saw and observed, but I'm objecting to him testifying regarding.
That's fair. Mr. Lowry, just talk about what you think as opposed to what all of you thought. So if you think it, it's fine. And just say, this is what I thought based on your contacts with her. Okay? Mr. Young?
You understand that? I mean, you good with that?
Yeah, yeah.
Okay. So you mentioned that she had OCD. Why do you say that?
She liked to keep stuff in a particular spot. She liked to keep everything clean.
But when you're around her, would you make sure that things remain clean? Because she may want to,
Yep.
might say something to you.
Yep.
Was she the same with Harley?
She was the same with everybody like that, as far as I know.
Anything unusual about that?
No, that's normal to me.
You know other people like that?
No.
Had you ever known her to use different names or identify herself by a different name?
I can't remember.
Do you ever remember her referring to herself as a person named Harmony?
I do know she didn't like her name, but I don't remember her calling herself Harmony.
Did she tell you why she didn't like her name?
No.
Do you ever remember her calling herself Jasmine?
No.
And you said you had a niece named Jasmine or Jazz?
Jaslyn.
Sorry.
Jaslyn.
And are you familiar whether or not your sister liked Disney movies?
I believe she did.
And are you familiar with the movie Aladdin?
Yeah.
You familiar with a character named Jasmine in that movie?
Yes, sir.
Who's Jasmine in that movie?
The princess.
Do you ever remember her talking in a Spanish accent?
No,
You ever seen her in a stressful situation?
no,
How about when you came to Colorado?
yeah,
During the entire time you're in Colorado with her, had you ever seen her speak in a Spanish accent?
no,
Have you ever heard her refer to herself as Maria?
no,
Does Maria mean anything to you? That name?
no,
You have an opinion as to whether or not your sister has the capacity to know right from wrong.
thought she did.
Why do you say that?
She's too smart.
Was your sister a really good athlete as well?
Yes, sir.
What kind of sports did she play?
Softball, basketball, baseball.
Was she more of a leader than a follower?
That's what I thought.
Never see her drive a vehicle, for instance.
Yes, sir.
Did she have the ability to stop at red lights, go when it turns green, that kind of thing?
Yes, sir.
Have you ever seen her, have you witnessed her obey the law?
Yes, sir.
And is that throughout your entire life?
Yep.
And is that for even when you were in Colorado?
I mean, we didn't ride with her. She didn't really drive around with us, but I mean, she acted funny the whole time we was down here, to be honest.
Tell us about that. Why was she acting funny?
Seemed like she was stressed out about everything that was going on, looking over her shoulders. But I figured that was because of the laws was constantly coming after her.
You alluded to this earlier, but she had just been in handcuffs prior to you guys picking her up, right?
Yep.
And do you think that may have caused her to be a little bit paranoid about the police following her and things
Yep.
like that? What about her capacity to do things intentionally, perform intentional acts? Let's talk about the budget rental van. Did you see anything unusual about her ability to rent another van to go to South Carolina?
No.
Does she have the capacity to intend to do things?
Yeah.
Does she have the capacity to make decisions and use judgment and reflection in making those decisions?
Yeah.
What did you think when you heard that she pled not guilty by reason of insanity?
I believe that was the only way she did it at that time.
Did what?
What we're here for.
Wait a moment, Your Honor.
You may.
Those are my questions, Your Honor. Thank you.
Cross-examination, Mr. Polino?
Mr. Lowry,
Or
I know this is difficult. And we've met before, correct?
Yep.
Remember I came and I saw you and your mom and everything out in North Carolina. I want to go back just to the attorney's last question. You indicated she must have been when she did this. And what you're meaning is the Letecia that you know, the only way she could have done something so horrible is she has some type of mental break.
when everything first happened, and we found out that the little boy was found in the body, we found out where he was found. At that point I knew she did it because when I seen that suitcase and asked her about it, she just acted funny to me. And yeah, I thought she might have snapped and went crazy.
Okay.
But now, no. No.
Okay. And talk Lumberton, you're from Lumberton, North Carolina, correct?
Yep.
And that's kind of a small, how big of Lumberton?
It's not that big.
A pretty small community.
Yeah.
And this case has got a national exposure.
Yep.
And it's got even more kind of exposure, you know, in Lumberton. Lumberton
Yep.
press is, you know, picked up and followed this case pretty closely.
Yep.
And over the 3 years since this has happened, this has caused a lot of shame to come upon you and your family.
Yep.
It makes you feel like your own town, kind of like an outcast,
Yep.
like everybody's looking and judging you,
Yep.
like everybody's looking and judging your mom.
Yep.
And this is all your stepsister's fault.
No, she's not my stepsister.
You don't,
But-
you have different fathers, correct?
I mean, I don't consider that a stepsister. That's half.
Okay. This is all your half sister's fault.
Yes.
And you're angry at her for it.
Yep.
When you were out in Colorado during this time, she was acting different than normal.
Yes, she was.
She was pacing up and down. She seemed highly paranoid.
Yep.
Your mother was concerned for her mental health.
Yep.
Did your mom, Brenda, and you all fly back together?
Yeah, me and my mom and Aunt Brenda.
Okay. And you flew out of DIA?
Yeah.
Do you call her during that time in Colorado that you were with her being paranoid and believing there's a black BMW that was following her?
Yeah, she did do that.
Go back. You're actually named after your father? Middle name?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
And my grandpa.
Okay. And Ms. Stauch was 16 when she moved out, correct?
I believe.
Okay. So she's 14 years older than you. That would mean you're only 2 years old when she moved out of the house.
Yeah. Yes, sir.
So you never had any active memories of her with James or how James treated her.
No, sir.
And you said that she would come home from time to time, but she never came back to North Carolina, never came back to Lumberton to see you guys until after James died.
Not that I can't remember.
Okay. You indicated, let's go. I mean, I'm going to get into this, and I know you might not like it, but your dad, James Lowry, did have a drinking problem.
Yes, he did, as far as I know.
He would get drunk and he'd beat the piss out of your mom.
Yeah, as far as I know, yep.
Sometimes it'd be so bad that your mom would have to take all you kids to a hotel room till he sobered up.
Yep.
Sometimes your mom would have to go to work and James be the one watching after you kids. Correct?
Yep.
One time, James gave you so much alcohol that you passed out. Well, they went up the,
Overruled.
one time James gave you so much alcohol that you passed out.
Yep.
And you were under, so if you passed when you were 7, you would have had been, what, 4, 5, or 6?
When you asked
You
that,
passed out. Remember how old you were?
I was like 3.
Okay. You indicated that, I think you said before, that she would sometimes freak out if something was out of place.
Yep.
Stauch. And also, do you recall that sometimes when Ms. Stauch would come visit you or see you, sometimes she would leave you knives so you'd be able to protect yourself?
Yep, she did do that.
No further questions?
Correct.
Yes, Your Honor, thanks. Tell us a little bit more about your dad. Was he in the armed forces?
Yep,
What branch?
Air Force.
And did he go to war?
I believe he did.
And did that create problems for him?
Yep.
Tell the jury about that. What changed with your dad when he got back from war?
All I know is my mom always told me when he stepped off that plane,
Hold on, just a moment. Yeah, sustained. You can talk about what you observed. You can't talk about what somebody else told you, okay?
I mean, I can't really talk about him because I was
Okay.
3 when they separated. I was 7 when he died.
That's all right.
Okay, that's okay. It's all right.
Now, earlier we talked about your mom being protective of the kids. Do you remember that?
Yeah.
If something was going on with your dad and the kids, what would your mom do?
She don't play about her kids. Something went on between. I don't know how she did Daddy, but I know if something went on between her and like her ex-boyfriends or whatever, and they wanted to come to us or say something to us, she didn't play about us. She protected us.
She protected you kids? Did she protect herself?
Yep.
Did you ever see her hit your dad?
I don't remember hitting on. I don't remember. I can't remember much of my daddy because I was so young. But I know her boyfriend after my daddy, Greg, he would hit on her, and she would fight him back.
Did you want to be here today to testify?
Nope.
Did you get subpoenaed and that's why you came out here?
Yep.
Mr. Tellini was asking you questions about insanity or some kind of mental break. And you said initially that's what you thought, but then you said now, no. What did you mean?
You just. I just feel like it's too much got done for you to be saying that now. For her to be saying that.
Well, do you think when she was telling you that there's softball equipment in the suitcase, she knew right from wrong, had the capacity to form the intent to do things?
Yep.
Overruled.
Those are my questions, Jar. Thanks.
Do any of the jurors have any questions for Mr. Lowry? Like we have one. Counsel, retrieve that question and approach, please. Mr. Lowry, do you remember where the green suitcase was retrieved from when you were getting the defendant's belongings at the house?
No.
I will allow reasonable follow-up as to that question only. Prosecution.
When was the first time you saw that green suitcase?
When we was moving to switching the vans.
Did you ever see it come out of the house when you guys are moving things out of the house into the first van?
No. Not that I can remember.
Thanks, Jeff.
Defense? All right, thank you, Mr. Lowry. You may step down. Just watch your step. Prosecution, call your next witness, please.
Yes, Your Honor, Josh Johnson.
Mr. Johnson, if you would step forward and raise your right hand, please, sir. Right up here. It's okay. Everybody's a little confused first. Step right on up. Raise your right hand. Do you swear affirm the testimony you're about to give in this matter will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
Yes.
Go ahead and have a seat in the witness stand. Please watch your step as you step into the stand. Ms. Gratiano?
Thank you. Good morning, sir.
Good morning.
Would you state your name for the record?
Joshua Johnson,
And in February of 2020, where were you employed?
budget truck rental on Garden of the Gods Road.
And how long had you worked there?
At that time, like 15, 16 years.
Over the course of that 15, 16 years, how many cars, vans, et cetera, would you say that you've rented out?
Thousands.
Thousands. And to be clear, what kind of company is Budget?
Oh, we rent moving trucks.
And do they come in all different sizes?
Yeah, they start at a little cargo vans, like what you see Amazon driving, all the way up to 26-foot trucks.
And what was your role while you were working with Budget?
I would rent the trucks, clean the trucks, check them in. That's about it.
Okay. And in terms of renting the trucks, can you break down kind of the initial process of renting to someone? What are the steps that you take?
Well, it comes in if they have a reservation. We would get their reservation out, check their driver's license, check their credit card, enter everything into the system, show them the vehicle, give them the keys, and then they're on their way.
Okay. And in terms of, you mentioned checking an ID. How is that generally presented by the person that reserved it, by the person who appears in front of you? How does that work?
Well, if the person who's renting it, they have to be there. So we check their driver's license and their credit card. If they have someone else driving it as well, we would check additional driver's licenses. But the person whose name's on the reservation has to be the one there at the beginning.
And on February 1st of 2020, were you working that day?
Yes.
And in terms of who is responsible for not only going over the paperwork, but ensuring that an identification is checked and appropriate signatures are obtained, whose role was that?
That was mine for that day.
Your Honor, permission to approach with what has been marked as People's Exhibit 239, previously shown to the defense.
You may go ahead.
Mr. Johnson, if you can take a moment to review what I've handed you marked as People's Exhibit 239, it's pages 1 through 5. Take a moment to familiarize yourself with that.
Okay.
All right. Do you recognize People's Exhibit 239?
Yeah, this is a budget rental contract with the insurance waiver and the damage inspection sheet.
And were you there when those pages were gone over with the person who rented that particular vehicle in the agreement?
Yes.
Your Honor, at this time, and also I guess I should ask, would you say that that's an accurate representation of a copy of that agreement?
Yes. It has all the pages that would go on a rental agreement.
All right. Your Honor, at this time, we would move for the admission of People's Exhibit 239.
Defense? No objection. Exhibit 239 will be admitted. Go ahead.
All right. And if we can project, and Your Honor, permission to publish as well.
You may.
Mr. Johnson, in front of you is a pointer.
Got the red handle.
It's an old school pointer. So you'll have to extend it.
If it comes off, it's okay.
All right. And we'll zoom through the exhibit, but I'll ask you to point out some different areas of the agreement because over 15 years of experience, you probably have this memorized. Where would the person's name who rented the vehicle, where does that appear on the first page of People's Exhibit 239?
Right up here under customer information.
Okay. And who is the rental of for that particular vehicle?
It says Letecia Stauch.
Okay. And you explained that part of your process is to verify somebody's identity through identification of some sort. Did that happen here?
Yes.
Do you know how you did that?
I asked for a driver's license and then the form of payment, which would have to match the driver's license.
And you mentioned that, but can we see that in the zoomed in portion of People's Exhibit 239? Can you point that out?
Yeah, right here it has the last four of the driver's license, the state it was issued in, and then the country it was issued in for the driver's license.
Okay, what state is that?
Looks like it's South Carolina,
South-
SB.
South Carolina. And you mentioned the budget rental location. Can you point out what address of the budget rental location of the store that you were working at?
Right up here, Palmer House Truck Rentals, 140 East Garden of the Gods Road.
And in terms of the reservation, do you have any idea when the reservation or at least the rental agreement formally took place? Do you have a date and time on this document?
Yeah, it was opened on February 1st, 2020 at 8:17 a.m. It doesn't say what day the reservation was made, but that's the day that we opened this contract.
So when, for example, the person identified themselves as Letecia Stauch with an identification card came to you at the store, would this have been approximate time for when this agreement was taking place?
Yeah, that would be when I hit the open agreement and typed in the reservation.
Okay,
And it starts at that moment.
all right. And if we could zoom out briefly. Mr. Johnson, can you now point out what the length of that rental agreement was reserved for, where that is?
Right here, the rental date out is actually at the bottom. Says the 1st of February 2020 to the 5th of February 2020 at 8:15.
All right. And in terms of identification of a truck, however large or small it is there a particular identification number that is given to each asset of budget?
Yeah, this one has the vehicle unit number that we have right here.
And we'll zoom in for you there.
And
What-
it's 911739.
Great.
And then it also mentions the size up to the right a little bit.
Okay, and what was the size?
Cargo van high roof. There at the top right under rental information. Yep, right there.
Okay. And we'll move on to the second page of that document. Now, Mr. Johnson, here, what is the second page of this rental agreement? What's the function of this page?
This is the actual like contract, what they can and can't do. Mentions fueling up the truck at the beginning. It also explains late fees, drop off fees, or if they were to use any of the budget easy pass items. And then they would sign for the rental right here.
And I know that you're facing the screen, so it's a little tricky, but if you wouldn't mind just making sure to project your voice, just so the
Oh,
people, the
I
jurors in the back.
apologize.
That's all right. The jurors in the back can hear you. Now, you explained that you go over the terms and conditions. Is that something that takes 15 seconds to do?
It's only a couple of minutes. It's actually not that hard to go over it.
Mhm.
Because the main parts of it are they got to return the truck full of fuel for the top line. Then the next section is just a bunch of wording on they're waiving the right for insurance. And it explains which insurances they did not or did purchase. On this one, they didn't purchase any insurance.
Okay,
And then it goes down into drop off fees, late fees, and the plate pass for toll roads. Fine, right there.
now throughout what we see in the second page of that agreement, there are various spots where initials can be placed.
Correct. 4 initials and then 1 signature from the customer.
Okay. And so in reading through that paragraph, it would be your job to make sure that the person is putting their initials at every appropriate spot, right?
Correct.
And so as you're going through page 2 of that agreement, was that being done at every appropriate spot?
Yes.
We'll move on to page 3 of that agreement. All right, now, Mr. Johnson, what is the function of this third page for the rental process?
This page is just showing all the late fees that could occur if it was not returned on time, if they went over on mileage, or any other additional fees that could accrue, which is located on the right side. And then the customer signatures there, and then the dealer initial for us is located on the left.
Okay, and we'll just zoom in a bit. So there's a number of different lines. Fair to say that there are various types of penalties that can accrue if you don't follow the terms of the agreement. Is that right?
Correct.
Okay. And as you're going over that, on this particular date, was that understood based on how you went through that agreement?
Yes.
You mentioned that there's on the bottom bottom right side of the agreement, there's a signature that appears.
If that is the customer's signature, that they understand all the possible fees and charges for any additional.
Okay. And we'll move on to page 4 of the agreement. Now, Mr. Johnson, here what we see on page 4, what's the function of this particular portion?
This is the insurance page showing that they're waiving all of the insurances. Various types, insurance for the truck, liability, roadside, and towing if they had any.
Okay.
And shows that they denied all of it. And then up here is our rental agreement and then insurance company and policy number of the person renting the truck.
Okay. And again, a little tricky, but just make sure that you keep your voice up.
Yeah, sorry about that.
That's all right. So this actual document, the title of this document that we see on page 4 of the agreement, what is the title of this?
Personal financial responsibility certificate.
And you mentioned insurance. How do you verify if that person that's renting the vehicle has insurance?
All they do is write their information there.
Mhm.
And then budget, if anything happens, budget goes for that. We don't do it ourselves. We just go off of what the customer puts up there.
Okay. So in terms of understanding financial responsibility in renting this particular vehicle, was there anything that was left unclear during this rental process on that day?
They sign at the bottom once they've gone through all of this.
And on that particular day, for the person that rented this vehicle known as Letecia Stauch, were there any questions about the financial responsibility she was undertaking that day?
Not to my knowledge.
Okay. And we'll move on to the last page of that agreement. May have to rotate this one. So it's a little clear for you to read. There we go. Thank you. Right. Now, this is the last page of that agreement. Mr. Johnson, what is the function of this 5th and last page?
This is just to show the damages of the truck as we rented it, so that when it gets to the other location, we have a record of what it looked like before and or after if something were to have occurred. Also includes the mileage of the vehicle when we rent it.
Now, in terms of assessing the damage, is that done only by you or is that done with the renter as well?
That's done with us. We check it all when it comes in
Mhm.
and then mark it all. This one just looks like it just had some typical light scraping, like it brushed against a tree. No actual physical damage to it at all.
Okay. And in terms of acknowledging any sort of defects in that particular rental vehicle, whose signature appears in the middle of that page?
We're talking this one or down here?
We'll start with the first spot.
That one is budget rep initial, so that would be mine.
Okay.
It's like whoever rented it also accidentally initialed there, which is common. And then this is the renter's signature and then the date.
Okay. Thank you. You can turn around. Throughout this process, as you were renting this vehicle, you had an opportunity to interact with the person that identified themselves.
Correct.
Okay. And how did that person identify themselves? By what name?
Letecia Stauch.
And would you recognize that person if they were here today in court?
Probably not, due to the number of trucks I'd rented
Okay.
before and or after it.
And the number of years that have passed?
Yes.
Okay. Throughout that interaction that you had with the person that identified themselves as Letecia Stauch, was there any uncertainty that you had based on renting cars as to whether or not they understood the rules and conditions that applied?
No, I had no concerns with that. Everything seemed pretty normal.
Okay. Had you ever experienced a time where you didn't feel comfortable renting out a car to someone?
Yeah, I had customers that have come in and you can smell alcohol on their breath, so we didn't rent them their vehicle that day.
Okay. And in terms of having general concerns about whether or not they understood the agreement, would you have stopped that process at that time?
If there were any issues like that, like concerns that I would have for it, yes.
Okay. And in terms of the responsibility that you undertook as a representative of budget on February 1st of 2020, did you have any concerns as to whether or not the person that presented themselves as Letecia Stauch understood the terms of that rental agreement?
I had no concerns with that, no.
As we went through People's Exhibit 239, there were a number of initials and signatures that appeared on that document.
Correct.
Were those initials and signature consistent with the same person?
Yes.
And what was that name?
Letecia Stauch.
And the initials that we would have seen that you've gone through throughout that document, were those initials consistent as well?
Yes.
Your Honor, we'll pass the witness.
Cross-examination, Mr. Cook.
I don't have any questions, Your Honor.
Do any of the jurors have any questions for Mr. Johnson? Looks like we have one. You would retrieve that and counsel approach, please. Mr. Johnson, when was the budget rental van reservation made? On what date?
We don't have that information on here. It just shows the day that they picked up the truck that they had reserved.
Where was the van to be turned in on February 5 of 2020?
It was due in Grapevine, Texas, on East Dallas Road.
And was this a local rental or a one-way rental?
It was a one-way.
Right.
Pick up here and drop off in Texas.
I will allow reasonable follow-up as to those questions only. Prosecution?
Mr. Johnson, you just explained the drop-off location.
Correct.
Who selects that location?
They do when they reserve it, unless they come in without a reservation.
And is there another opportunity for them to drop off that vehicle at other locations?
Typically what budget has is if you're dropping off like in one city, as long as it's within like 50 miles of the original location, it can be dropped off there with no additional fees or charges.
And if a renter chooses to drop that off at a different location, all those penalties, fines, surcharges, et cetera, may come into play at that point?
Correct. And there could also be additional, like if you're dropping it off 1,000 miles from where it's supposed to, they would charge additional costs based on distance.
Thanks.
Mr. Cook?
Thank you.
Follow-up?
Can you tell, or do you know where the truck was ultimately dropped off?
Not from this paperwork. Budget would actually have to give the log for it, but I don't have that here.
Thank you.
All right. Thank you, sir. You may step down.
That's right. Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Prosecution, call your next witness. Well, hold on. Counsel approach, please. Prosecution, call your next witness, please.
Call Sergeant Roy Ditzler.
Sergeant Ditzler, if you would step forward and raise your right hand, please, sir. Do you swear or affirm the testimony about giving this man will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do, Your Honor.
Go ahead and have a seat in the witness stand. Please watch your step as you step into the stand.
Morning.
Morning, sir.
Please state your name, spell your last for the record.
Yes, my name is Roy A. Ditzler, D-I-T-Z-L-E-R.
What's your occupation?
I am a sergeant with the Colorado Springs Police Department.
How long have you been with the Colorado Springs Police Department?
February of this year was 21 years for me.
Congratulations.
Thanks, sir.
What are your current duties?
Currently, as of mid to late January, I was assigned to the Drug Enforcement Administration Task Force, which investigates drug drug organizations, large-scale drug organizations.
Sounds pretty exciting, but we're not going to talk about that now. Let's talk about what you were doing back in January of 2020.
Yes, January of 2020, I was assigned to Colorado Springs Police Department's Metro Vice Intelligence Task Force, or unit, and I was the supervisor of the intelligence unit.
And what does the intelligence unit do?
So I was responsible for coordinating and allocating resources for undercover operations, surveillance activity, conducting investigations that involve threats to city government entities, law enforcement entities, domestic terrorism incidents. I was also assigned as a joint terrorism task force officer with the FBI at that time.
Back on January 31st of 2020, were you asked to assist in the investigation of the disappearance of Gannon Stauch?
Yes, I was. I was asked by my lieutenant at the time, John Koch, to reach out and contact Detective Abinsham with the El Paso County Sheriff's Office. I was informed that he needed assistance or assets from our division for surveillance activity.
Were you also asked to place a GPS device on a vehicle?
Yes, sir. As part of that surveillance activity, I was asked to affix a GPS tracker to a vehicle. Yes, sir.
And what is a GPS tracker?
GPS tracker is like a magnetic device. They vary in sizes, but you affix them to the undercarriage of a vehicle. They can be affixed or to various types of property, but in this case specific, it was going to be affixed to a vehicle. So the magnet affixes or attaches to a metal property under the undercarriage of the vehicle. They vary in sizes. They could be an inch by an inch. They could be 3 inches by 4 inches. And they really just look like a piece of thin rubber that covers the actual magnet itself, and it operates with a GPS.
And why were you asked to come in to do that? Is there a technique or plan on installing these GPS devices on vehicles?
Yes, well, as being assigned or part of being assigned to Metro VNI, we oftentimes get tasked with placing those trackers, GPS devices on vehicles or property. It's a bit of a specialized detail. I've provided training to detectives at the division on proper installation and how to use those devices once they're affixed. The application that you can use on your phone or a computer to track the said item that you affix the tracker to. You can place geofences around a certain area that you want to receive alert or notification on if a vehicle is going to move and it moves out of a certain area. You might receive a notification to your phone or to your computer letting you know that it was moving.
Sounds like there's various ways to use this device and monitor the movement of the vehicle. Is that fair?
Yes, sir.
Is there also some covertness to it? Do you want the person who owns the vehicle to know that you're placing this GPS device on it?
No, sir.
And why is that?
Well, one of the reasons that you may use a GPS tracker as an investigative technique is to minimize exposure or the chance that the person you're trying to surveil may find out or figure out that you're actually surveilling them. They may see you affixing a tracker. They may see the same vehicles passing by multiple times, and that could compromise an investigation. So you want to use techniques and tactics to use undercover methods to even install the tracker.
So what information did you receive on January 31st of 2020 to go through this process of the surveillance and installation of the GPS tracker?
So Detective Abinsham requested that Metro VNI units and myself respond out to 6627 Mandan Drive out in the county of El Paso, which was Letecia Stauch's residence. Deputies had been on scene conducting keep the peace investigation, and he informed me that he wanted surveillance to be conducted on a vehicle associated to Letecia Stauch. That vehicle was described as a 2020 silver Nissan sedan and Altima, and that there was a secondary vehicle also associated at the time, and that was a white Ford van.
And was one of the things you wanted to do is to see whether or not this vehicle might lead to the whereabouts of Gannon Stauch?
Yes.
So talk to us about when you get out to 6627 Mandan Drive, what do you see going on?
Well, the first units to arrive out there arrived at about 11:30 in the morning, and Detective Reeder, was the first detective to place what we would call an eyeball. He was the primary eye, the one responsible for relaying initial information about activity going on at the house. When the specific vehicle that we're watching was moving, the occupants that were inside that vehicle, so that information could be aired out over the radio, so we could adjust our surveillance assets to follow that vehicle away from the house. It was reported to me that Letecia Stauch and her daughter, Miss Hunt, were loading up belongings from the house into the vehicles.
And did you see that when you got to that residence?
I did not. I was set up for a takeaway location, so I did not have a visual on the residence.
And how many vehicles are we talking about that are part of this surveillance team?
Well, I requested numerous assets from the 40s team. The 40s is a street level narcotics team that usually consists back then was like 6 to 7 personnel. They're no longer in existence. And I requested assistance from the 50s. The 50s is another street level narcotics team. Again, the same number of personnel assigned, and requested assets from the 80s, who is also a street level narcotics team. However, their focus is marijuana. They were a slightly larger team. Reason I asked for so many assets to respond out there, who actually didn't, or not all of those assets arrived until later on in the surveillance operation when we were downtown, is because it's difficult to account for one vehicle, a primary vehicle, let alone 2 vehicles, setting up enough takeaways to be able to follow somebody away. If somebody gets out on foot, the subject that you're surveilling gets out on foot and is going into businesses, or you want to follow them around in a particular area, to send a resource out there to do that is pretty taxing. So just with the time frame of the activity being around the downtown area, we reached the downtown area around 1500 hours, and we all know, if you're familiar with Colorado Springs, in the downtown it gets pretty busy. You start dealing with rush hour traffic. We don't know where an individual may or may not go, so it becomes very taxing to maintain surveillance, at least until you can affix the GPS tracker, which Detective Abenshand had informed me he was applying to the court for the issuance of a search warrant so that we could do that.
I'm assuming that you're all in undercover vehicles and you're in an undercover capacity, you're not wearing police uniforms, that kind of thing.
That is correct.
So who did you follow? Who did you start your surveillance on starting at 6627 Mandan Drive?
Well, I was part of the pack, if you will. I didn't really get close to the target vehicle until we left the neighborhood of 6627 Mandan Drive, until we got to the downtown area around East Kiowa and North Tejon Avenue. It was at that point that I actually had to make a move and get close enough to the vehicle, because we didn't know if they were going to, whoever was driving the silver sedan was going to actually park downtown, continue through downtown. So I just ended up being in a good position at that intersection to watch Letecia Stauch and her daughter exit the vehicle at the intersection and walk northbound on Tejon. And then the vehicle continued through the intersection and parked just to the east of that intersection, where I relayed that information to other units who picked up or maintain an eye of that vehicle, so to say.
And so which vehicle are we talking about?
At that point, it was the silver Nissan Altima sedan.
And did you have photos or did you know who Letecia Stauch was and who Harley Hunt was before you began this surveillance?
Yes, that information was relayed by Detective Abenshan, I believe, at the onset of that investigation.
And so you said you were downtown around 1500 or 3 p.m. in the afternoon on the 31st.
Yes, sir.
What happens after they stop the car and you said the defendant and her daughter get out of the car?
It looked like they were walking towards the Rutledges, about the 100 block of North Tejon. Just was unable to maintain that eye to see where in fact they had walked to, but we were able to maintain an eye, a constant eye on the vehicle that they had exited, which was the Nissan. So we just took up continued surveillance positions in that area for the takeaways because the white Ford van had also parked close by in the vicinity. I don't remember the exact area, but we kept an eye on both of those vehicles.
Where did the Nissan Altima ultimately go? And did you track it? What direction did it go and that kind of thing?
So eventually, the occupants all come back from whatever store they were in or whatever area. I couldn't tell you what store they might have went into, but Letecia and her daughter come back to the silver Nissan. They meet up with the occupants of the white van temporarily, and then both vehicles go mobile again. We continue our surveillance, ultimately ending at 5855 Corporate Drive, which is the Extended Stay America Hotel on the north side of Colorado Springs up by Woodman. I guess would be a major intersection that you might be familiar with. The vehicle parked in there, nosed into a parking space. And about that same time, I received my information from Detective Abenshan that the search warrant had been signed and that we could go ahead and affix the GPS tracker. And somehow I ended up with the tracker at the time. So we just came up with what I would describe as a hasty ruse to conceal our efforts to affix the tracker. And what do I mean by that? Simply just put another vehicle in front of the silver Nissan, popped the hood, made it look like there was a mechanical problem. And that's to afford a little bit of concealability because of where the vehicle was parked. You definitely don't want somebody from the hotel seeing what's going on, or you're the intended person that you're actually surveilling to walk out of the business and see what's going on. So while the hood's popped and the car's blocking the Nissan, I crawled underneath and affixed the tracker to the vehicle.
And who drove the Nissan Altima, do you know, from 6627 to downtown, then downtown to the extended stay?
Cell phones off, please.
Do you know who was driving that Nissan Altima?
It was an unknown female reported by surveillance. I do not know the identity.
And so where did you place this GPS tracker physically on the car?
So interestingly enough, it was as you can see, I'm not a small guy and drawing the short straw, I guess. The Nissan was really a bit of a low profile vehicle. Ordinarily, if time afforded or time allowed, you'd want to really pull up the schematics and look at the undercarriage, maybe on Google or the internet, right? And see what might be the best place. We didn't have that kind of time. If you don't have that kind of time, it's also beneficial to be able to crawl way up under that car and look at the undercarriage because you want to make sure you get a good seat with that magnet to the metal. None of that was a great option. I crawled as far under as I could and just was going by feel because there's areas of a vehicle you don't want to fix the tracker because it'll bounce off and you don't want to be that person. But I was able to get under there far enough to feel a good seat and then confirm that the tracker was affixed properly and that a ping or that the system was operating properly from Detective Abenshan.
Did you have anything to do with the frequency of the GPS hits that the tracker would get back to the sheriff's office?
No, that would be set by the lead investigator or whoever wrote the search warrant for that.
Those are my questions, Your Honor. Thanks.
Cross-examination.
No,
Do any of the jurors have any questions for Detective, or for Sergeant Dietzler? No? All right, thank you, sir. You may step down. All right, ladies and gentlemen, we will take our morning recess. If I can have everyone back in place and ready to go at 10:45, we should be able to start on time at that point. Again, don't discuss the case among yourself. Don't discuss the case with anyone else. Don't do your own research about any aspect of this case. With that, all rise for the jury, please. Thank you. You may all be seated. The record should reflect the jury has left the courtroom. Is there anything you need to take up outside the presence of the jury at this point in time? Prosecution?
No, Your Honor.
Defense? Okay, court will be in recess. Thank you.
All rise.
Okay, let's go ahead and bring the jury in. You okay, Kimberly? All rise for the jury, please. Thank you. May all be seated. Court will recall 20 CR 1358, People versus Letecia Stauch. Record should reflect the jury has returned to the courtroom. Prosecution, call your next witness, please.
Thanks, Judge. We would call Lieutenant Jake Abdenshan.
Lieutenant, if you would step forward and raise your right hand, please, sir. You swear or affirm the testimony about to give in this man will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth. Go ahead and have a seat in the witness stand. Please watch your step as you step into the stand.
Morning.
Good morning.
Could you please introduce yourself to the jury and spell your last name for the record?
My name is Jacob Abenshan. Last name is spelled Abendschahan.
What is your occupation?
I've been a deputy sheriff for 21 years.
And what is your current duties?
I'm a lieutenant for the patrol division.
What does a lieutenant for the patrol division do?
A lot of administrative work, as near as I can tell. Just overseeing the general operations of the day shift on patrol.
Sounds like a blast.
You would think, but
Been there, done that. Don't want to do it again. Let me take you back to 2020. What was your role with the sheriff's office back in 2020?
in 2020, I was a detective sergeant in the investigations division.
And as a detective sergeant, were you involved in the investigation of the disappearance of Gannon Stauch back on January 27th, 2020?
I did have some involvement with that case.
And particularly on January 31st, 2020, were you responsible for the placement and monitoring of a GPS device on a particular rental vehicle?
Yes, I coordinated getting an electronic surveillance device to members of the Metro Vice and Narcotics Unit to place on a Nissan Altima that had been rented by Letecia Stauch.
And why did you want to do that, or why did the investigation kind of go down that road?
The GPS trackers are a good investigative tool when we are trying to identify, whether a person or a vehicle is in a particular place at a particular time. Information gathering.
Was there any interest in hopefully perhaps finding the location of where Gannon Stauch may be based on tracking a vehicle associated with the defendant?
That was a possibility, yes.
Did you work with Sergeant Ditzler in the placement of this GPS device on the rental vehicle?
I met the, I met VNI at the Police Operations Center downtown and handed them the tracking device.
Did you have to obtain a warrant before the device was actually placed on this rental vehicle?
Someone did, yes. I did not.
Was this rental vehicle a silver Nissan Altima?
I believe so, yes.
And so what was your role going to be once this device was placed on this Nissan Altima?
Once it was activated, I had the ability at the time to log into the system and basically see where the tracker was at any given time. And it's kind of it generates points like a latitude, longitude, and addresses to let us know kind of how the vehicle is moving.
And would you be monitoring this 24/7 or would it just be randomly looked at?
Not 24/7. It keeps a historical record of the addresses that a vehicle was at, how long it stopped, what time it was there, that kind of thing. I did that evening make some periodic checks just to make sure that it is registering, because if it were to run out of battery or something, that would be an expensive issue.
And do you have the ability to set the timing on this GPS device as to when it would, I don't know what the proper term is, but go off to say where the vehicle is placed at any given time?
There is like a time adjustment that you can use based on how long you think it's going to be placed. For this one in particular, I can't remember what the exact time frame was, probably 1 or 2 minutes at most. But it can go as long as 10 minutes or every 5 seconds as needed.
And did you have the ability to change that during the time period the GPS tracker was on the vehicle?
Yes.
And are you capable of, well, not you personally, but can you print out a document that would reflect the GPS pings where the vehicle was at any given time while the tracker was on it?
Yes, I am. And it's a report. It's called an address report, which basically for the time frame that you select, will list everywhere the vehicle had gone during that time period at different rates of intervals of time, every minute or so.
And did you do that for this particular vehicle, the Nissan Altima?
Yes.
And was those timeframes January 31st, 2020 at 1:38 p.m. to February 1st, 2020 at 4:44 p.m.? Does that sound right?
Yes, that sounds right.
And in front of you there is People's Exhibit 230. Do you see that?
I do.
And do you recognize what People's Exhibit 230 is?
Yes, this is the address report. It's the same as the one I attached to my supplement to the case.
And does that accurately reflect the pings that came off this GPS device that was attached to the Nissan Altima that was related to Letecia Stauch, the defendant in this case?
Yes.
Move to admit People's Exhibit 230.
Objection.
Hold on. At one point you referred to it as 220.
Oh, did I? I'm sorry.
And that's previously admitted through Detective Perry. So are we talking 230, not 220?
230. I apologize, Your Honor.
Okay. Just want to make sure it's clear. 230 will be admitted. Go ahead.
And so for the record, 230 is a 5-page report that has various GPS data on it. Is that correct?
Yes.
If we can publish 230, please. Can we zoom in on that just a little bit? So what we did, we zoomed in on the top of page 1 of People's Exhibit 230. Could you just kind of run down what we see here, and we can just use the top line there. Can you just go through the different columns and explain what we're looking at here for the jury?
Absolutely. So the first column, the devices, we named the different devices based on the detectives that would use them frequently. So this one is named after me with the moniker of Jake. In Mountain Time, it gives the date and the time that that tracker device is currently experiencing. At this point, it may have been sitting on my desk or in a car or something while I was waiting. So the speed was 0 miles per hour. Park time, generally, that's like if it moves from one spot to another and then stops, it'll give us, like the third line down, 26 seconds. And then it gives an estimated address. 16 East Castilla would be basically the sheriff's office, main office, or the parking garage directly behind it, which is where my office was. So then next it's giving a latitude and longitude. So those are the GPS coordinates on that device.
And obviously that would match up to the address that's listed in a previous
Yes, it would
column.
be very close, yes.
So at the first entry, is it safe to say that the GPS device is at the sheriff's office?
I would feel comfortable with that, yes.
If we could go to page 2. And if we can scroll down to 1458. Thank you. So we've done that now. We're kind of in the middle of page 2 of People's Exhibit 230. I'll turn your attention to the time of 1458, which is 2:58 in the afternoon. Is that right?
Yes.
That entry of the location, are you familiar with that address? 6275 Corporate Drive, Colorado Springs, Colorado.
I think it's a hotel, but I can't be certain.
Would that be the Extended Suites Hotel?
It could be, again, I'm not sure.
Okay. And do you know where the GPS device was placed on the Nissan?
I do not.
Okay. Needless to say, that's the north side of town, that particular address.
Yes.
And so what can we tell, because that address is on there multiple times, if we can just scroll down a little bit, please. Does that indicate to you that the vehicle is not moving if it is placed on that vehicle at that time?
Yes, that would be the park time where it's just kind of resting.
And then we go down to 1537, and it says device in motion over 5 miles an hour. What does that mean?
That means that the device itself attached to the vehicle is moving and moving faster than 5 miles an hour.
Does that mean the vehicle's moving?
Yes, it would.
And so at 3:37 on January 31st, the vehicle is now in motion.
Yes.
We can go ahead and scroll down now, please. We can go to 15, that's fine right there, 1538. So at 3:38, it's at 585 Corporate Drive, Colorado Springs, Colorado.
Yes.
Is that the general area of where it was at 6275 Corporate Drive?
That would be close, yes.
Now, if we can go down to 1545, please. Right there's good. So at 3:45, again, we see the device in motion. What does that mean to you?
That line at 1545, it was moving 22 miles an hour in a southwesterly direction.
And how about below that at 1600 or 4 PM on January 31st? Does it tell you the speed of the vehicle there as well?
Yes, 52 miles an hour.
And if we can just scroll down, the vehicle is definitely moving now because it goes 52, 57, 43. Is that right?
Yes.
And so I want to turn your attention to the highlighted portion there, January 31st at 4:41. What's going on at that entry?
With that entry, we have a brief stop in the area of 15291 South Perry Park.
And why do you say brief stop?
The park time doesn't indicate it was, very long at all.
And what's the significance of this location and the vehicle being in this location? Do you know?
I know that became an area of interest later in the investigation.
Were there huge searches going on in that area related to this particular stop?
Yes, there were.
And why were there huge searches going on in that area?
We were searching for evidence or Gannon's body in the area.
And is that because the vehicle associated with Letecia Stauch stopped in that area?
That played into our decision to search the area, yes.
And so when this particular stop happens, and is this in the Palmer Lake area?
This is just north of Palmer Lake on Highway 105, just north of the county line, actually.
And on Highway 85, or was it 195?
105.
105, I'm sorry. On Highway 105, is there an area of that known as the S curve just north of Palmer Lake?
Yes,
Is that what we're talking about here, this address?
yes.
When this was actually happening, were you monitoring the GPS device live, or did you come across this at a later time?
It was likely at a later time.
If we can go ahead and just scroll down, about right there's good. So at 4:58, the vehicle now is going how fast?
41 miles an hour westbound.
So can you tell by looking at this, the frequency of the GPS pings?
Well, that looks like 5 minutes, every 5 minutes.
And would that be consistent throughout? Tell us how that works.
Boy, somebody else would probably have to get into the specifics on
Define it.
Yeah, when it gets into that.
Is the GPS device designed to ping if the vehicle stops, for instance?
Yes.
And if it doesn't stop, will it go every 5 minutes?
Yeah, that would,
So there's-
depending on what the setting, and based on that, I probably set it for 5 minutes just out of concern of the battery dying.
The battery dies, you don't get any GPS data, is that right?
Right.
Just have a second, Your Honor. Can we scroll down to page 3 at 1823? So at 1823, we're back at 5850 Corporate Drive. Is that right?
Yes.
And is that the same area that the vehicle was at roughly at 3:38 PM on January 31st?
Yes.
And so now we're at 6:23 PM, is that right?
Yes.
And finally, can we go to the last page of People's Exhibit 230, please? You can scroll down to, that's good right there. We can just scroll over to the, get the date in, please. Thank you, appreciate it. So on February 1st, 10:52 a.m., the vehicle is in Castle Rock. That
Yes,
fair?
that is correct.
Vehicle is heading north at this point.
Yes.
If we can scroll down to 1606. That's good. And so at 4:06 p.m., the vehicle now is in Denver.
Yes, at the rental car return or rental car area at DIA.
And do you have information to corroborate the individuals who rented this vehicle, returned the vehicle back at DIA?
One of the detectives got information that the car had been returned, and so we sent someone up to retrieve the GPS device off the car.
Now, this information that we have in People's Exhibit 230, is it common for other individuals to use this data in conjunction with cell phone data, app data, GPS data from other vehicles to kind of coordinate where individuals are at any given time?
Yes, we have that capability.
Thank you very much. No further questions.
Cross-examination?
No questions for this witness, Your Honor.
Do any of the jurors have any questions for Lieutenant Abishon? All right, thank you, sir. You may step down. Prosecution, call your next witness, please.
Call Brian Rogers.
Mr. Rogers, if you would step forward and raise your right hand, please, sir. Do you swear from the testimony about to give in this matter will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Go ahead and have a seat for the witness stand. Please watch your step as you step into the stand. Grant?
Thank you, Your Honor. Good morning, sir. How are you?
Good morning. Good. How are you?
Good. Will you please introduce yourself to our jury and then spell your name for the court reporter?
I am Detective Brian Rogers. I work for the Colorado Springs Police Department as a digital forensics detective. And my last name is Rogers.
Pretty easy spelling.
Yes.
You said that you work for Colorado Springs Police Department, and I think you mentioned what you do. Can you repeat that, please?
I'm a digital forensics detective.
What does that mean?
I extract and examine data from digital devices like computers, cell phones, video surveillance systems, and vehicles.
What kind of education do you have and training do you have that allows you to do that kind of work?
I have a bachelor's degree in software engineering, a master's degree in information system security. And since I started that position, I've attended over 700 hours in training directly related to digital forensics in computers, cell phones, videos, and vehicles.
What do you actually do to, you just mentioned a bunch of different devices. What do you actually do to those devices to extract data from them?
It depends on the type of device or the operating system or even the type of security that is set up on the device. But I'll either have to communicate with the device, like change some settings and extract the information if I have the password or if there is no security. If there is security on a device, I have to try and find a way to break into it or circumvent that security and extract the information.
How many devices have you worked on in your career?
Over my career, I wouldn't know. Last year, I did over 700 cell phones and over 100 computers. I believe over 20 surveillance systems and a few vehicles.
Just last year alone?
Yes.
Do you have certifications as well?
Yes.
Tell the jury about that.
I am an NCASE certified examiner. NCASE is one of our digital forensic suites. It's used for examining data. I'm a certified hacking forensic investigator. I'm also certified in analyzing vehicle data, and I'm a certified forensic analyst.
Are you a member of any professional organizations?
I was previously, but I did let that lapse. We weren't getting any benefit from the organization.
All right. Have you been qualified and testified as an expert witness in
Yeah.
court?
Yes,
How many times?
more than 50 in this district.
Have you testified in any other districts besides the 4th Judicial District?
Yes, I have.
Oh, how many others?
In Arapahoe County in Colorado, in federal court in Denver, and federal court in Bakersfield, California.
And in each of those, excuse me, I've got a frog in my throat this morning. In each of those examples, were you qualified as a digital forensic examiner expert?
Or something along those lines, yes.
Okay. All right, at this time I'd move to qualify Detective Rogers as a expert witness and digital forensic examiner.
Thanks. The witness will be so qualified.
May I approach the witness, Your Honor? I'm going to show you Detective People's Exhibit 716. Detective, do you recognize that exhibit?
I do.
How do you recognize it?
I recognize the barcode number. I just looked at this out in the hallway before I
Okay.
came in.
So it's actually a manila envelope, correct?
Yes.
Is it typical that the work you do is placed on some other medium, either a disk or maybe even a hard drive, and then put in a similar envelope?
Yes, that happens. Otherwise, we'll preserve it online in one of our records management systems.
Okay. So does this particular envelope contain some work that you did on a particular device?
Yes.
When did you do the work on this particular device?
January 30th, 2020.
And how did you obtain whatever device we're going to talk about? Who gave it to you?
I was contacted by El Paso County Sheriff's Office Deputy Robert Soroy and asked to extract information from one cell phone.
Based on context at the time, was this a phone that was related to the investigation into Gannon Stauch's disappearance?
Yes.
Did Detective Soroy ask you to perform any particular type of functions as it relates to getting data off that device?
How do you mean?
Well, did he ask you, what did he ask you?
He just asked me to extract the information, not to examine any data from the device.
Okay. And what kind of device was it?
It was an Apple iPhone 8 Plus.
When a detective, either from your own agency or from a fellow agency in the community, asks you to do something like that, do they give you any information about where the phone came from?
It depends on the case, but in this case, I was not told where it had come from.
Okay. When you actually extract data from a phone, do you sometimes gather that information from the data that you extract from it?
Yes.
Was that true of this particular device?
No, I did not review the data.
Okay. So when you tell the jury what you did with this particular iPhone 8 Plus.
So the device was given to me by Deputy Soroy. It was a locked iPhone. Using our tools, I was able to circumvent the security and extract the information from the device. The data that was obtained was copied to a hard drive and then given to Deputy Soroy. The only information that I obtained just for documentation purposes was the phone number and the account associated with the phone.
And that's what I was referring to earlier, and I didn't ask a very good question. So is what's contained in People's Exhibit 716, is that the result of your extraction of that iPhone 8 Plus?
Yes.
Is it a fair and accurate representation as to that extraction process?
Yes.
You know, at this time, I would move for admission of People's 716.
Mr. Cook? Exhibit 716 will be admitted.
Once you completed that extraction, do you turn that back over to the El Paso County Sheriff's Office?
Yes, I did.
And then that was the total sum of your work on that device?
Yes.
What was the phone number associated with that device?
It was 843-957-3486.
And you mentioned you were able to get an email on that device as well. What was that email?
It was harley_hunt@yahoo.com.
Okay, thank you. That's all I have.
Thank you.
Cross-examination.
No
Mr. Cook?
questions, Your Honor.
Do any of the jurors have any questions for Detective Rogers? Thank you, sir. You may step down.
Thank you.
Retrieve that exhibit, Judge.
You may go ahead. Prosecution for the next witness, please.
People would call Robert Soroy to the stand.
Right. Mr. Soroy, if you would step forward and raise your right hand, please. You swear affirm the testimony about to give in this matter will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth.
Yes, Your Honor.
Go ahead and have a seat in the witness stand, and please watch your step as you step into the stand.
Morning.
Good morning, sir.
How you doing?
All right.
Good. Could you state your name and spell your last for the record?
Yes, sir. My name's Robert Soroy. My last name is spelled Sirois.
What is your current occupation?
I currently work in cybersecurity.
And you live down in Florida now?
Very recently, yes, sir.
We're flying a lot of people back from Florida for this. Did you live here in Colorado Springs back in 2020?
Yes, sir, I did.
Specifically, back in January of 2020, were you working for the El Paso County Sheriff's Office?
Yes, sir. At that time, I was employed as a detective at the sheriff's office.
And how long were you with the sheriff's office?
As of that time, since 2013, so 7 years.
And were you assigned to do particular duties with regards to this investigation, the disappearance of Gannon Stauch?
Yes, sir.
One of those duties, did that involve you going out to the airport to obtain some video, surveillance video from a rental car agency?
That's correct. That would have been the Colorado Springs Airport.
Tell us about that. Tell the jury what you did and why you're going out there.
Yeah, and it was January 29th in the morning. I was assigned to look for video surveillance regarding the rental of a car by Letecia Stauch at the Colorado Springs Airport. I went there and spoke with Colorado Springs Police, who are assigned to the airport, and they do police operations at the airport, and they also have access to the camera systems at the airport. And those guys told me they would look for some video for me. While they were doing that, I went up to the Avis rental car counter and spoke with the manager there. And they have some of their own cameras at the counter that they operate. And so the manager there was working with me on getting some of that footage as well.
And did you have some information with regards to a vehicle that was rented by Letecia Stauch from the Avis rental car at the airport?
Yeah, I was able to provide them some information on the car, which was a white Kia Rio. Had Texas plates, I believe. And so they were able to look up that in their system and give me some information regarding the rental, like the name of the person who rented it, what date and time that was. And so that way we could go back and look at the camera footage for when that rental was done at the counter there in the airport. And that information was for the previous morning around 8:50 or 9, where Letecia rented the car at the counter there. So there's video where she comes up, spends a few minutes doing the rental paperwork and then leaving to go get presumably to go get the rental car. And some of the airport footage from Colorado Springs Police corroborated that, had the same information, and she was in the same area of the airport kind of thing.
And so prior to going, did you have information what Letecia Stauch looked like, that kind of thing?
Yeah, I believe I had some pictures on my cell phone, driver's license info, that kind of thing for Letecia, so that I knew what I was, who I was looking for, what their physical description was, that kind of thing.
Did you have a rental agreement at that point, or did you get that later?
The manager there did give me a rental agreement with some of that information as to who did the rental or who paid for the rental.
And did that sync up with the video surveillance that you saw, that you alluded to, Ms. Stauch going to the counter and renting the vehicle?
Correct.
Now, at the time you're at the airport, were there some efforts being made to locate Letecia Stauch's black Tiguan?
Yes, sir.
Do you know what those efforts were?
Those efforts were assigned to other detectives and not myself. But I was aware that the airport was one of the locations we might have been looking for that particular vehicle. And so there were some detectives searching the airport for the black Tiguan at that time.
Did anything kind of unusual happen as you're at the Avis rental car with regards to the keys to this particular Kia rental?
Yes. So I was looking at a computer with the manager at Avis, and we were looking at some of the video surveillance. And one of the lot attendants came in, and she said, "Hey, I just got handed the keys to this vehicle about 10 minutes ago." And this was, I probably wasn't there for super long at that point in time. And she saw what we were looking at on the computer screen and said, that's the same person that just handed me the keys. And she said, this lady handed me the keys, turned around, walked away, got in a white Jetta with another female, and they just drove off right away.
Now, prior to going out there, did you have any information that the Kia rental had been returned yet?
No, I did not believe it was returned yet, or didn't know yet.
Did you have any information whether or not the Kia was even at the airport at that point?
No, sir.
And so you go out there, just so I'm clear, you're going to talk to the manager about getting some surveillance video. One of the employees from Avis comes in and says, "Hey, that lady just dropped off the keys." And so what did you do after that?
At that point, I knew I had some Colorado Springs detectives in the airport searching for the Tiguan. And so I called that detective and I said, "Hey, the car, the Kia just got returned, but the lot attendant told me it's not in the returns area. Can you help me search the airport for this white Kia as well?" And a little while later, he called me back and said he found it in the short-term parking lot.
And is that different from the rental return parking lot?
Yes, sir. If I might explain that.
Oh, sure, go ahead. Where is it located in relation to the rental car parking?
Yeah, at Colorado Springs Airport, everything's outdoor parking. So when you come in, there'll be signs for parking and rental car returns. So rental car returns takes you kind of to the front of the airport, and it's this area just for that. Short-term parking would take you through a gate that you have to get a ticket for, and then park in that area. And then long-term takes you to yet another area through a different gate that you'd have to take a ticket for to get into.
Okay. Now, do you see the person that you saw on the surveillance video, that the attendant saw on the surveillance video and said, "This is the person to hand me the keys"? Letecia Stauch. Is she in the courtroom today?
Yeah, sure. Yes, sir. She's on my right wearing a green long sleeve shirt.
And that's the same person you saw in the video?
Yes, sir.
May the record reflect identification of the defendant?
The record will so reflect. Go ahead.
Thank you. So you got word that the Kia rental car was found in short-term parking. What did you do next?
At that point, I spoke a little bit more with the manager at Avis to get permission to search that car, since I knew that's what I would be doing as my next step in investigating the rental car now that we knew where it was. And so he put me in contact with, I guess, like a regional manager out of a different city who was able to provide me that consent to search the Kia via email. And so after I received that email, I went over there and took pictures, our normal process for searching a vehicle, opening up all the doors, taking pictures, documenting what you can see prior to actually going in there with, gloves and stuff on and digging around looking for items or for different kinds of evidence.
And do you know whether or not that's Avis's routine practice is to have customers to drop their cars off in short-term parking?
Objection, Your Honor, that calls for speculation.
Sustained.
I'm just asking if he knows, Your Honor. I didn't ask.
Yep, but the knowledge is going to come from some hearsay source.
Okay.
Sustained.
So you said you went and you took photos of the Kia rental, and did you search it at that time?
Yes, sir.
Did you have to get permission to search it?
Yes, sir, and I received that via email from a regional Avis manager.
Okay. And so if I may approach the witness, Your Honor.
Okay.
I'm going to hand you a series of exhibits.
Thank you.
I'll give you the numbers in just a second.
Oh, yeah, no, go ahead. And when you take the lid off or unscrew it, realize that it comes out fast.
Understood.
Okay, in front of you, I've given you People's Exhibits 234 through 238. Do you see those?
Yes, sir.
Okay. In People's Exhibits 234 through 237, are those photographs?
Yes, sir.
And are those photographs of the Kia rental as you saw it at the airport in short-term parking?
Yes, sir.
And do they actually depict that vehicle as you saw it there and the items that you found inside that vehicle as you saw it there on January 31st, or excuse me, January 29th, 2020?
Yes, sir.
Move to admit People's Exhibits 234 through 237.
Mr. Cook, exhibits 234 through 237 will be admitted. Go ahead.
Oh, I said just a moment.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Sorry.
That's okay.
That's fine, Your Honor, no objection.
All right, exhibit 234 through 237 will be admitted. Go ahead.
Request to publish People's Exhibit 234.
You may, go ahead.
Okay, so we see People's Exhibit 234 here. What do we see in this exhibit?
This is a photograph of the car in the foreground. The closest car in the picture is the white Kia Rio that we've been discussing. The cars behind it are incidental. They had nothing to do with the photograph I was taking. They just happened to be in the background.
In this parking area, is this the short-term parking area that you alluded to?
Yes, sir. I can see the E1 parking sign back there that I had documented in my report.
Now, are you familiar with the airport and the various parking areas for the airport?
I'm pretty familiar with it, yes.
Are there signs that indicate long-term parking, short-term parking, rental car return?
Yeah, especially as you drive in, but also as you enter the parking area.
Now, if you go into the rental return area, would you have to get a parking ticket to park?
No, sir.
If you go into short-term or long-term parking, would you have to get a parking ticket to enter that facility?
Yes, sir. In both those cases, there's a gate that stops you and you have to press a button to get a ticket.
And are you familiar with how long you could stay in there without having to pay to park, for instance?
Yeah, I believe it was less than an hour, maybe an hour. May not even have been that long. And I only ran into that because I had driven through there to get over to where I took these photographs and kind of ran into that issue over at the place where you would pay for your parking. So I could drive through again to get into the correct lot. But I don't recall the exact amount of time, but it was less than an hour. It wasn't a huge amount of time.
Okay. If we can now go to People's Exhibit 235. What do we see in People's Exhibit 235?
This is a picture between the driver's seat and the door down where there's a little bit of carpet kind of in that gap between the side of the seat and the door. And this is one of those parking tickets you get when you go park in short-term parking.
We can go to 236, please. What do we see in 236?
This is a picture of the one side of that parking ticket.
In 237?
This is a picture of the back side of that same parking ticket.
And so does it have a date and time stamped on that?
Yes, sir. This one says January 28th of 2020 at 16:41 hours, so 4:41 PM.
What does that tell you with regards to that time stamp?
That tells me that that's the time the ticket was obtained at the gate. So when you push the button and it spits the ticket out, that is stamped on there at that time, which I know because I had to go through the same process when I went to go take these pictures and do the search of that car.
And then in front of you, we have People's Exhibit 238, which should be one of those brown envelopes. Do you see that?
Oh. Yes, sir.
What is People's Exhibit 238?
This is one of our evidence envelopes signed by me in the typical way that I sign it, at least on one side. And it's Sheriff's Office item number 14 with a description of parking ticket found in white Kia. So this would have been the envelope containing that ticket in the picture that I obtained from the search.
Would you need to open that to see if that in fact is the parking ticket in there?
I mean, yeah, somebody else has opened this since I originally sealed it. I
Is that
believe.
because there's two pieces of tape on there?
Yeah, so the way I would have originally sealed it is with this red tape at the top. I always do my name like this. I always do my initials like this. This piece of tape at the bottom is new since I first sealed it.
Why don't we go ahead and open it up? I think there may be some scissors to your right.
Okay.
Sneak down by the Kleenex glass.
Yeah.
And if you want gloves, there's some gloves over there too.
I'm okay to open this, Your Honor.
Yes.
Thank you.
It looks
if
like,
it-
go ahead. It looks like you retrieved something from that envelope. Do you recognize that item?
Yes, sir. This is the same parking ticket we've been discussing in these pictures.
And is it in general same condition as it was when you packaged it?
Yes, sir.
Move to admit People's Exhibit 238.
Mr. Cook,
No objection.
Exhibit 238 will be admitted. Go ahead.
Go ahead and repackage that if you don't mind.
Somebody else will have to tape it.
We'll leave it as is right now, okay?
Understood.
Did you also do some cell bright extractions from cell phones in this case?
I did, sir.
And what is a cell bright extraction?
A Celebrate extraction is a Celebrate is a tool we use to download data from electronic devices, primarily cell phones, but it's capable of retrieving data from other types of devices. And so when we say a Celebrate download, what we mean is downloading data from an electronic device using that Celebrate tool.
And what kind of experience and training do you have in using that cell bright tool?
I have a fair amount of training in digital forensics, including Celebrate specific training provided by the vendor for using their tool for the purpose of cell phone extractions.
And approximately how many times have you done cell bright extractions?
Guessing probably about 300 extractions during my time at the sheriff's office.
And can you just describe the process for the jury? What exactly do you do with a phone to extract the information off of it?
Yes, sir. In order to extract data from a cell phone, there's quite a few different factors. So it can depend on the state of the phone, whether it's on or off, the screen's broken, whether it has an SD card in it, a SIM card in it, those kinds of things. But in general, what we like to do is make sure that the cell phone can't communicate with an outside network. And so that way we know it's not talking to other phones, talking to other networks while it's sitting in our lab as evidence. And so there's a few ways to do that. We can put it in, or it can be turned off, or it can be, we can take the SIM card out so it can't talk to a cellular network, or it can be put in a special box that blocks radio signals. And I would have to refer to my report to understand the condition of a particular extraction that I did and what those circumstances were. But at that point, we can connect the phone to the Celebrate device, so the tool that actually does the data extraction. And at that point, we also have some options. So depending on the make, model, firmware version, security patch, Celebrate will be able to communicate with that phone in a couple different ways. One way is it can read it as basically it will establish a communication link. So it'll send a piece of software to the phone that's very tiny that allows that communication to take place. And the phone has something built into it, most phones, called an application programming interface, or an API. And that's just a fancy way of saying that phone has made certain kinds of communication available that Celebrate can utilize. So for example, Celebrate could say, hey phone, let me download your pictures. And the phone will say, okay, here's my pictures. You can have all of them, or you can have some of them, or you can have only these ones. And again, that depends on a lot of factors. And what that results in is what we call a logical extraction. So we're saying, can we have certain pieces of data? And the phone says, yes, here they are. The second type of extraction we can do is called a file system. So that would be like opening some kind of drive, like a CD or a hard drive or a USB drive, and seeing all those files and folders there and taking them all and downloading them. And again, that depends on certain factors with the actual phone itself. And then the third type of extraction is called a physical extraction. And that's where you have Celebrate is able to get access to the physical place where data is stored on the phone, whether that's like flash storage, or if, you know, phones don't really store data this way, but the old way would be like a spinny disk drive where there's actually like a metal magnetic disk with ones and zeros on it, and it can see all those ones and zeros and get every single bit, byte for byte, of data off the device, which is very rare for cell phones. But it is technically one method we can extract data, and that's called a physical extraction. At that point, Celebrate downloads data in whatever fashion it can, and then it brings it into one of our forensic computers in the lab, where we can look at it through probably Celebrate software, but it's not limited to just Celebrate software. There's other types of programs and tools we can use to look at that same data.
And when you extract the data off a cell phone, where do you put it? Where do you store it?
Mm-hmm. When we first download data off a cell phone, it's going to be in some files on one of our forensic workstations in our lab environment. From there, we copy it onto probably a CD or like a Blu-ray, whatever we can that's big enough to fit it on. And we'll put it in an envelope just like these, and we'll drop it into evidence just like any other type of evidence.
In this particular case, did you have an opportunity to do an extraction, a Celebrate extraction, on an iPhone 8 belonging to an Al Stauch?
Yes, sir, I did. I believe that was from a waiver authority.
Okay. And in front of you is People's Exhibit 226. Do you see that?
Yes, sir.
And what is People's Exhibit 226?
This is one of our evidence envelopes, again, signed by me, which I can tell by my initials on it across the piece of tape. And the description is item number 585, which is the sheriff's office item number. And it says it's a CD containing a celebrate report and photographs of Al S. I'm guessing that's going to say Al Stauch, iPhone 8 or cell phone. But this will be the CD that I would have put in evidence containing that data from the celebrate extraction.
And is that envelope still sealed with the original tape that you put on it?
Yeah, it doesn't look like it's been sealed in any other way since I originally sealed it on March 4th of 2020.
Does that tell you then the data that is on that CD or Blu-ray disc is accurate, same as it was when you put it in the envelope?
Yes, sir.
We've moved to admit People's Exhibit 226.
Defense,
No objection.
Exhibit 226 will be admitted. Go ahead.
Those are my questions, Your Honor. Thanks.
Cross-examination, Mr. Cook.
Are you working in Florida in law enforcement? Are you still a detective, or how shall I refer to you as?
You can refer to me as Robert. I left law enforcement last February.
Okay. All right. Well, Robert, so your part in this investigation of the disappearance of Gannon Stauch was what Mr. Young and you were talking about, but there were some other things you did as well, correct?
Yes, sir.
Okay. You collected samples from this Kia vehicle from the airport that you located and was pictured in the photograph.
Yeah, I collected a few DNA samples during that search as well.
Okay. You took DNA swabs from the trunk of the Kia?
Yeah, I believe the area that I swabbed in the trunk would have been the threshold. So the part at the back bumper that's kind of a lip that goes, over into the trunk.
Okay. So you got DNA from the trunk area of the Kia. You got DNA from the steering wheel and the shifter of the Kia.
Yes, sir.
And you got DNA swabs from the internal driver door latch, correct?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
So that would have been the latch on the inside part of the door.
Okay. And did you submit those DNA swabs you collected from this Kia to a lab for testing?
I personally did not. I only placed them in El Paso County evidence.
Do you know if these swabs were eventually tested or forwarded by somebody else with law enforcement to have testing on them?
If they were, I'm not aware of it.
Is there a difference for doing a Cellbrite download if you have the pass key or the passcode to the phone versus not having the passcode or the pass key to the phone?
Yes, sir. I mean, phones are designed to be secure and have varying types of security, and having a PIN code or a passcode is one type of security. So by inputting that PIN code, it will change the security state of the phone, and therefore, in most cases, the amount of data that's available to download from it.
Okay. So Mr. Stauch's phone, you had the passcode for that phone.
Yes, sir.
So you were able to access more information on his phone than you would be from a phone that you didn't have the passcode for, correct?
That's not necessarily true, but in most cases,
In most
is true.
cases.
Yes, sir.
Okay. That's all I have. Thank you, sir.
Do any of the jurors have any questions for Mr. Soroy? All right, thank you, sir. You may step down.
Thank you, sir, and thank you all.
Prosecution, call your next witness, please. All right, ladies and gentlemen, we're going to take a little bit longer lunch recess. So if I can have everyone back in the jury room at, say, 1:30, we should be able to start on time at that point. Again, don't discuss the case among yourselves. Don't discuss the case with anyone else. Don't go out and do your own research about any aspect of the case. With that, we'll see everybody back at 1:30. All rise for the jury, please. Thank you. You may all be seated. Record should reflect the jury has left the courtroom. Is there anything we need to take up outside the presence of the jury at this point in time? Prosecution?
No, Your Honor.
Defense?
Yes, sir.
Okay. We'll see everybody back at 1:30 then.
All
Thank you.
rise.